This video is looking at a short extract from H is for Hawk by Helen Macdonald. And what we're going to do is look at the extract initially and then look at some close reading ideas for it, with a mind to answering a question on how Macdonald uses language to convey details of her experience, or making sure you're familiar with the detail of this extract so you can pick it up in terms of an unseen comparison in an exam if you need to. So the first thing to do is to read through the extract, and I'm not going to do that on this video, so make sure that you've read it. There is a glossary at the bottom, so you can get some of the more obscure words, and as we're going through it, we may just stop and clarify understanding. But that's the first page, and then there's the second page. Okay, so moving to the first idea, what I've been doing is annotating really ideas as I go along to keep me on track during this video, and I will add in any more in blue and kind of highlight things so it marks where I'm talking about as we're going through this. So first of all, the line at the top, it strikes me that in terms of this extract, the really powerful things are Macdonald's reaction, her thoughts and feelings, the presentation of the birds, both of them, and the developing relationship, developing realisation as we go through. So bearing in mind that they could be potential focuses for questions and making your notes accordingly. Now, of course, this annotation is the first step, and you'll need to then kind of make sure that you've consolidated these notes so they're in a form that you could use and revise from. Okay, the first thing to look at is the little bold introduction, because there is the idea of the purpose of getting the hawk. The hawk is meant to represent, for Macdonald, some sort of emotional comfort or restoration. This is something she's doing following the death of her father to take her mind off her grief, her mind off her loss. And what she's hit with is a strongly emotional experience in itself. But understanding the purpose of getting the hawk, of buying the hawk, gives a little bit of an idea of the importance of the connection to her. And that is going to become the kind of all-important thing as the extract goes on. The first paragraph starts with a kind of more factual account of how she remembers the conversation and the actions of the man who is bringing the hawk to her. Okay. And he uses largely the language of administration and bureaucracy. Okay, this word bureaucracy meaning kind of official language, paperwork, red tape. And this process that he goes through in her very factual account of that contrasts with the later emotion and emotional connection. So they go through the process of checking the ring numbers, checking the articles, getting the paper, getting the forms. It's very logical, very unemotional, factual. She's using direct speech, which shows the detail and the intensity of the memory. She can quote back what was said. And ironically, it's the falconer here who introduces the concept of the wrong bird. So that ironically foreshadows what happens later. He is talking strictly about the paperwork, the idea that she has bought a bird with a certain identity, and he has to make sure she goes home with that bird, the one that matches the numbers and the details on the forms. However, we learn that once she sees the bird, what's right on paper is very wrong for her emotionally. So we carry on with this factual tone at the start of line 5. We noted the numbers, we stared down at the boxes at their parcel tape handles. And we've got the short sentence here. Again, very factual, very procedurally led. And then these clauses in this longer sentence kind of just look at the different steps they're taking. You know, it's direct, it's factual, and it's going to have this huge contrast with the experience of seeing the bird. We also meet the language of restriction. This is a box, there are doors, there are hinges, it's tied, it's going to be untied, it's got a dark interior. So the bird is very much shut up, kind of closed in. And as he starts to undo it, this sense of anticipation is built up by the different kind of descriptions of the different steps. And then the idea that you can't quite see properly, that squint, when you're screwing your eyes up into the darkness. And that darkness, we can pick that up because we've got light and dark imagery associated with this bird. So, it goes into the darkness. We then have this onomatopoeia, and it's repeated down here and down here. Okay, the thump, thump. And as if someone had punched it hard from within, that kind of more staccato sentence, giving this sense of power and violence about this bird. There is a kind of primitive force in the bird. And when he first notices how she is in the box, his attitude, the falconer's attitude, is one of kind of protection. And it marks the bird out as unusual. She's got her hood off. She shouldn't have her hood off. Why is the hood off? There's something unusual about this bird. And MacDonald explains with a sense of empathy, this is to protect the hawk. It's to make sure she's not too scared, too startled from fearful sights like us. There's this contrast between the human world and the hawk's world, the idea of this meeting of worlds, and this amazing, beautiful bird is actually going to have this revelation of an experience. We then continue with these short, fragmented sentences. Okay, so we're here now, line 11, a hinge untied, concentration, infinite caution. The different steps building the sense of anticipation. The image of daylight irrigating the box, the metaphor. Normally we use irrigation to talk about something being watered, to make sure things are watered. And usually, it's associated with kind of giving life. And this is another one of the ideas of associating this hawk with light. She's given life by the daylight. We get kind of different parts of her and the effect of those, the scratching talons, the thump, another. And then the metaphor which shows time slowing in the narrator's world, the air turned syrupy. If you think syrup is thick and sticky and difficult to kind of move through. Syrupy, slow, you have that sibilance there, that repetition of the S sound. And we move to this, again, another sense of anticipation. So you could go through your notes and consolidate them to say, how does MacDonald create a sense of anticipation? Here's another idea, this metaphor of before a battle. There's going to be something happening. We've got that plosive alliteration there on that B, implying that there's some force that's waiting behind it. With the last bow pulled free, he reached inside, and amid a whirring, chaotic clatter, okay, so I'm picking up the hard C sounds and the T, that consonance, okay, the repetition of a consonant sound, then throws us into the polysyndactic listing, that listing using and, because all of a sudden we have all of these elements thrown at us, the wings and feet and talons and a high-pitched twittering, the onomatopoeia on the twittering, and it's all happening at once. So this tense change into the present, giving us this sense of immediacy, of urgency. And again, we get a strange coincidence of world and deed. So she's playing with this idea of world. We'd usually say word and deed, Okay, so it's a little bit of a pun, but she acknowledges this sense of the pathetic fallacy. She says, just as the bird comes out of the box, wow, the sun comes out. Again, light connected to this bird. Her experience is almost mirroring the bird's experience, that as the bird comes out and sees the world, this huge world for the first time, so too is the narrator kind of bathed in light. And picking up on the idea of irrigation up here, we get a great flood of sunlight that drenches us. And we can say that really this bird is connected with light and the idea of life-giving force through those water images. Everything is brilliance and fury. So a huge kind of change of the world, emotionally the world, literally in terms of the sun coming out, happens with the introduction of this bird. You might want to, slightly more obscure, you might want to pick up on the idea of fury. If you look in the classics, the Furies were kind of female, angry, demonic figures who were, hell-bent on revenge. But we use, Furies to signify that. So this is a kind of female bird who is almost the embodiment of this passion coming out. We get the plosive alliteration on bard and beating. We get the slight personification of the fingers of the primaries, these different parts of the air. The scattered quills of a fretful porcupine or porpentine. This idea of kind of attack and sharpness and edginess about this bird. We get the kind of different listing of the parts of her, showing how the narrator's experience is almost struggling to take in the bird as a whole. She's concentrating on one part after another part after another part. And we have a series then of metaphors. My heart jumps sideways, huge, powerful emotional impact. And the metaphors that relate her to magic, a conjuring trick, to something primitive, the idea of a reptile, to something kind of beautiful and religious and faith-based and lost, a fallen angel, something that is on this earth but has come from heaven. A griffin from the pages of an illuminated bestiary, again that religious kind of traditional primitive kind of imagery, this idea of the kind of fighting thing with talons in a medieval book. Bright, distant, gold, this simile, like gold falling through water. Again, the kind of water idea and all the connotations of the value of gold. And the idea of falling is coming up twice here. The idea that, this bird has just arrived here, has kind of fallen from heaven almost. A marionette is one of those puppets with strings. And so, we've got all of these bits of her. She's kind of struggling to make sense of her power and almost needs somebody to operate her, to come together with her, to kind of reassemble the marionette to make it make sense. And again, if you haven't noticed the light splashed feathers, we've got again a brilliant blend of that light and water imagery coming together in that metaphor. The restriction carries on, her jesses, those strings, and the man holds them. And then we see for a moment her vulnerability in that simile, like a turkey in a butcher's shop. And then this image of revelation, okay? The idea that, she's seeing everything. She's so young and now everything is, as they say later, falling into her eyes, into her head. And we're still in the present tense and we're still listing to get that overwhelming sense with these big long sentences of what she is experiencing, and her brain is entirely astonished. So at the same time as this is a revelation for the hawk, it's also a revelation for MacDonald. So twice now, structurally, we've had MacDonald's experience mirroring that of the hawk. They're both drenched in light at that moment. They're both having this kind of wondrous realisation. And at the start of this paragraph, we get the contrast, the calmness of the man and his care and his kind of calm concern looking at the different steps in this sentence. So, he's very measured, he's very precise, his care is born out of, what he wants for the bird. And the long sentences kind of contrast here with her short life. For a while, this man has done everything for this bird, and brought her to what she is. And, the focus of, this man has done it. And then this man, I loved him fiercely. So, I guess the focus of the hawk's world is changing from this man who still, absolutely cares to her, to this involvement with MacDonald. And, she keeps turning to the hawk and keeps this idea of looking at the different elements of the bird. Her beak, her hackles, her wild eyes, the metaphor, colour of sun, more light, this natural force and power. And the whole world had fallen into them at once. So this huge kind of experience. And then if we go through the kind of fragility of this bird's head, contrasting with this enormous experience she's having. And here, we notice that she has an alien brain. I'm going to contrast that later on with this idea of the kind of foreign country for the second hawk. The onomatopoeic kind of fizzing and the idea of kind of fusing with terror, the intensity of experience. And then we are back all of a sudden as the kind of hood snaps shut, we're back to the world of paperwork because the bird has now been closed away again. And we get the kind of simple, blunt assertion, simple sentence, short sentence, it was the wrong bird. And that is relating to the world of paperwork. The actual details don't match. This was the younger one, the smaller one. This was not my hawk. And she's talking kind of legally, contractually. This is not the bird I bought. And then we have this one word, one sentence, one paragraph. Oh, the force and the realisation, the weight of the realisation after all of this, intense imagery, long sentences, kind of huge experience. Oh, everything has changed in that moment. She realises the mistake. And then factually, again, we put her back and open the other box, which was meant to hold the larger, older bird. And dear God, it did. So this kind of exclamation, the idea that things have changed, but everything was different. And a Victorian melodrama is one of those kind of really over-exaggerated dramas where you have villains creeping around in kind of cloaks and top hats and tying people to railway tracks and, kind of damsels in distress. And so she comes out making this huge fuss. And A Madwoman in the Attic is a reference to Jane Eyre, the Bronte novel, where, there is Bertha Mason is kept up in the attic and keeps getting out and injuring people and causing huge damage. And it's interesting to note here that all of the language describing this bird is comparing her to the first bird. It's obvious linguistically, it's obvious in terms of language that, the focus is on the first bird, smokier, darker, bigger. Instead of twittering, she wailed. Everything is being used with the first bird as a starting point. The harshness of the great, awful gouts of sound, like a thing in pain. It's kind of huge chunks of sound, and the idea it's unbearable. And we have the italicised internal monologue as she's repeating, this is my hawk, but then this isn't my hawk, this isn't my hawk. The kind of panic surrounding the lack of connection to this bird, because physically she finds that she can't really breathe. And again, this hawk has lost its hood now and grabbed the hood from the box as before, so repeats the action but with a very different sense of this bird. Looked into her eyes and saw something blank and crazy in her stare. So this is the language of disconnection going on. There is madness from a distant country. The first bird is kind of gloriously alien and fizzing. This one is just blank and foreign. I didn't recognise her being that lack of metaphorical and emotional connection. She has connected with the first bird. This one, there's nothing there. Okay, even though this is her, legally this is her hawk. And we have the kind of interspersed with the, this isn't my hawk, but this isn't my hawk, building this sense of kind of panic. And, again, looking at the contrast between here is the legal bit, here is the factual bit, step by step. Again, these multi-clause long sentences. This has been done, this has been done, this has been done, but it's conjunction. It isn't my hawk. This isn't my bird. Slow panic, kind of again fragmented. And then the realisation of what she's going to do. Etiquette is the kind of proper way of doing things, and she realises that what she is about to ask is really going against every rule and expectation. She knows she wants to ask about swapping birds, and it just isn't done. And prefacing this kind of with all of these kind of subtle building up, the ellipsis here, the questions, is all going for kind of, this risk, this uncertainty, but being driven by the powerful realisation that she knows she needs to ask. She can't just walk away from the first bird. She can't take the second bird. And the falconer realising, physically where she's going, and she keeps kind of trying to appeal to him. And again, questions, lots of buts, lots of fragmentation, lots of ellipsis, a crazy barrage of incoherent appeals. And again, the barrage kind of almost being the language of attack, of kind of war, being hit with all of these indistinguishable, kind of ununderstandable, incomprehensible questions and appeals. And then we go, into the idea that, she gets her own way. There's a strong kind of sense that we are allowed to swap birds because physically, the look on her face works with her pleas. And she realises that what she must look like is a tall white-faced woman with wind-wrecked hair and exhausted eyes, pleading with him on a quayside. This kind of supplication, okay, if you supplicate, it's this action of kind of begging, of imploring somebody. And Medea being the kind of classical tragic figure, please, just help me. And he also, with his connection with birds, he senses that my stuttered, the onomatopoeia there, isn't simple because it's an emotional connection. There's more to it than she can explain. She is being inarticulate. She cannot explain properly what she means. But he realises that it is in fact very important. And the extract ends with that sense of anticipation. There was a moment of total silence, presumably where the falconer reflects that he is about to go along with this breach of etiquette and to let her have the smaller bird. I hope that's helped. The next thing for you to do is to collect together ideas. So don't mention kind of light every time going chronologically through. You want to plan a section that says MacDonald uses imagery connected with light and water to describe the bird. MacDonald uses fragmentation of sentences or the length of sentences to show her different feelings. You need to make sure that these ideas are collected together rather than this kind of rush of mad annotation we've done now. Hopefully that helps. Okay, bye now.